Hola clase, ¿cómo están? Now we are going to review the ER and IR verbs, and this part is definitely going to be in your midterm exam. It is a way that we are going to remember how we use the AR verbs, how we call what is a conjugation, and the endings that we have. In the Spanish infinitive verbs, we have three kinds of infinitive verbs: AR endings, ER, and IR. So in chapter 2, you learned the AR verbs like caminar, estudiar, all these verbs that you went over in your page 50 and 51 in your chapter 2. Do you remember the endings are AR? Well, in this chapter, chapter 3, we are going to learn about the ER and IR verbs. The principle is the same. How do we use them? First of all, we need to remember the fundamental parts of the verb. Number one, what is an infinitive? An infinitive, it is the basic unconjugated verb or form of the verb. In this case, in English, you make infinitives with when you say to eat, to learn, to play, to study. All of these form of the action words are infinitive. We don't know who does the action. We just know that is an action word, infinitive form. It is unconjugated. How do we know unconjugated verbs in Spanish? We don't make up them. They already exist. So we learn estudiar, hablar, escuchar, tomar. In chapter 2. In chapter 3, we have the infinitives ER and IR. In this case, responder means to respond. Not respond, but to respond. It's an infinitive form. We have the verb itself, all the infinitives, and an R of the infinitive verbs, action words, and an R. And we have three kinds, AR, ER, and IR. So, but what is the ending? The ending is the ER. So the ER in this case is from responder. What is left is ER. What is left is called the stem, I'm sorry. ER is the ending. We have an estudiar, what will be the ending? AR. Caminar, to walk, what will be the ending? AR. So in this case, we're looking for ER verbs. Responder is the infinitive form to respond in English. ER or ER in Spanish is the ending. Number 3, what is left from the ending in this case is respond. Once we know that, it's going to be really helpful because it doesn't matter who does the action. We always want to keep the stem. For example, we call conjugation. Conjugation is when we have the infinitive verb, in this case, to respond. And how do you say I respond, you respond, she responds, we respond, they respond. So that is conjugating an infinitive verb. We need to know how do you say I, you, he, she, it, we, all of you, and they in Spanish, right? We call these words subject pronouns. Who does the action? It can be a person, it can be a thing, or it. So we have different ER verbs: beber, aprender, comer, creer en, leer, vender. You have all of these verbs in page, if I remember correctly. I want to be sure that we have it right. It should be page 100. Let me see, I have it right here because I don't want to give you the wrong information. So give me a sec. So this is in your page 100 and 101, all of these verbs. So let's see how we're going to conjugate the verb aprender. We need to know persons and number are based on the stem, okay? So we're not going to change the stem. We're going to change the endings. But let's start with the yo, o, tú, es, usted, él, ella, nosotros, nosotras, hemos, vosotros, vosotras, eis, ustedes, ellos, ellas, en. So how you see here, we are following the endings. O, es, hemos, en. It's very, very important that we remember the endings. So it doesn't matter who does the action. We are going to keep the stem and we are going to change the ending. Okay, so in this case the ending is er. When I use it in the yo form, I change the ending for o, but if you noticed, I keep the stem. We always need to remember to keep the stem. It doesn't matter who does the action, and any verb we are using, we keep the stem, we change the ending. Okay? Vale? Vale means okay. Nosotros, I'm missing the S in this one. Nosotros aprendemos español. Okay, so we need the S. I'm missing the S here. I'm sorry, misspelled. Aprendemos español en clase. Muy bien. I keep the stem. What is the stem? Aprend. We are going to keep the stem and we are going to change the ending. Remember, I as O, you as S, he, she. How do you say he, she? Él, ella, and you formal, usted, es. So we always need to remember how do you conjugate this verb. For example, beber, to drink. Yo bebo, tú bebes, usted, él, ella bebe, nosotros, nosotras bebemos, vosotros and vosotras, which means you, everyone, vosotros is bebéis. We don't use very much this form. In Latin America, it's used mostly in Spain. And then ustedes means you, everyone in Latin America. So you need to spell it out. Ustedes is U-S-T-E-D-E-S. Ustedes beben. Ellos and ellas. Remember, ellos is they boys and ellas they girls. Beben. As example, Mario bebe mucha soda. Mario is he, which means él, and it should be the ending e. I'm keeping the stem, remember, I'm keeping the stem, but I'm changing the ending, and I'm going to use the green color for the ending. And if you always keep the stem, in this case, stem doesn't matter what verb I give you, you always keep the stem, and depending of what kind of ending is, in this case er, we are going to change the ending. This is the part that we need to change depending on the person who does the action. If you remember, you memorized O, S, E, hemos, en. You don't need the vosotros, but if you want to say O, S, E, hemos, es, en, you always will remember that is first yo. In the first column on the left, we have the singular form, always. The yo, I, you, is two, usted, you formal, he and she, always the singular forms on the left, and the plural form on the right. And it's the we, the you, everyone, you all, as you say in the South, and they, girls and they, boys. Okay, this is very important for any verb in this Spanish 1, Spanish 2, in general. If we don't know the subject pronouns, we don't know what the end to be. Comer, to eat. Yo como, tú comes, usted come. Remember, O es E. hemos, es, en. It doesn't matter what ER verb you have, it's going to be always the same ending, the person who does the action. Ver means to see, to watch. It's such a short verb, but it's a little bit irregular. Yes, it still follows the, instead of taking, we are going to keep the E, and we're going to follow the same pattern. Yo, o, tú, es, hemos, es, en. Veo es no vio, es veo, ves, ve, vemos, ven. The verb, to see or to watch, is a little bit irregular only in its yo form. Also notice that the vosotros form, vosotras form has no written accent because it is only one syllable. But we don't use that much vosotros, as I mentioned before. You are not going to have it in your exams either in your quizzes. Muy bien. Instead of saying vo in the yo form, we say veo. ¿Vale? Siguiente. We have another kind of IR. Remember at the beginning I said we have three kinds of infinitives, AR, ER, and IR. Or in Spanish, AR, ER, and IR. The endings of the ER or IR are going to be exactly the same, that the ER, but only what variation? That variation is going to be in the we form. Before showing you that slide, I just want you to see that we have all of these verbs in page 101 in your Portales book. So abrir to open, asistir, decidir, escribir, recibir, vivir. And we follow the same pattern, the same way of conjugating verbs. We are going to identify the ending, IR in this case. We need to know the meaning as well, okay? Because in order to understand what the sentence or reading comprehension is saying, or you're writing your own sentences, you need to know the meaning of all of these verbs. Right now, we are learning how to use them, conjugating them. So the stem is called abro. I know it sounds weird, but we need to keep the stem. How would you say I open? Yo abro. We keep the stem, we change the ending. What about in the you form? Tú abres. Usted, él, ella abre. Nosotros is the only one that it changes, okay? Instead of ending with hemos, we are going to have the hemos sound, okay? So I know in English it's hard to pronounce the E sound when you have an I, but remember, the I in Spanish sound is I. Hemos. Nosotros abrimos. This is the only one that is going to change. Of course, the vosotros, but we are not going to be using it. But yes, if you want to see the differences between ER and IR, there you go. Those are the only changes that we're going to have when we conjugate them. Okay? Besides that, the endings are exactly the same that the ER verbs. Once you know those, it doesn't matter what ER or I verb you have, you're going to use the same pattern. Decidir, yo decido, to decide. Decides, decide, decidimos, deciden. Escribir, escribo, escribes, escribe, escribimos, escriben. Yo escribo cartas, write letters. So it's important for you to know the emphasis that we do in the escribo. Yo escribo en español. Yo decido estudiar español. It is very important that you know how to write sentences because knowing just the verbs by themselves is not helpful. You need to remember that we have the subject, is yo, who does the action, followed by the conjugated verb, escribo, and the rest of the sentence where it explains the verb, right? Yo escribo en español. Decidir, to decide, decidir. Yo decido estudiar español. We have the subject, we have the conjugated verb. Remember, we keep the stem, and we change the ending in the yo form. So I hope you find this a PowerPoint helpful. Let me know, give me your feedback, and if you think it has been helpful, I will keep making more of these videos. Be ready for your exam. I will be sending you an email pretty soon. Adios. Ciao, ciao.